No. Good evening, my name is Jim Conlan and welcome to our special edition of this week's RCB Radio Sport Show, West Clare, live on 92.5 and 94.8 FM and online at www.rcb.ie. This week's show will also be streamed on our YouTube channel, RCB Sport. I'm delighted this evening to be joined by an all-star hurling cast of legends, which includes Cyril Farrell, Seanie McGrath, TJ Ryan and Adrian Fenlon. As tonight we count down the top 10 hurlers who have won Hurler of the Year over the last 20 years, of which there are 18 different winners. And what we're going to do for tonight's proceedings, this is only to be selected eligible to this, you have to have won Hurler of the Year from the last 20 years, from 2000 to 2020. There are 18 different winners. There is one winner has won it 3 times, 2002, 2006, and 2012. So that's why we have 18 winners. So I'm just going to count down the order from 2000 to 2019, and then we're going to open it up by coming to Cyril Farrell to hear his selection from 10 to 5. So from 2000, DJ Carey from Kilkenny won the award. 2001, Tommy Dunn from Tipperary won the award. Henry Shefflin in 2002 won a 3-time winner, won it in 2002, 2006 and 2012. 2003 winner is JJ Delaney from Kilkenny. 2004 is Sean O'Halpine from Cork and followed up by his teammate in 2005, Jerry O'Connor from Cork. Dan Shanahan won it in 2007 from Waterford. 2008 winner is Owen Larkin from Kilkenny and his teammate Tommy Walsh won it in 2009. 2010 winner is Larry Corbett from Tipperary. 2011 winner is Michael Finley from Kilkenny. 2013 is the only Clare selection in Tony Kelly. 2014, another Kilkenny winner in Richie Hogan. 2015, TJ Reid wins the award for Kilkenny. 2016, we have our only Waterford representative, Austin Gleeson. 2017, we have our only Galway representative in Joe Canning. In 2018, we have our only Limerick representative in Keane Lynch. And 2019, we have our second Tipperary representative in Seamus Conlan. So, sir, I'm just going to come to you from first. So if you don't mind, Sir Farrell, if you could tell me from 10 down to 5, what is your selection?
Well, I suppose, Jim, the first thing is that they're all great players and all playing, I suppose you'd have to say, on winning teams and on good teams. And you could have great hurlers on maybe not as good a team and maybe not getting it. My number 10 would be Austin Gleeson, the man from Waterford. A lot of Waterford people would feel he had a great year, but maybe he got it too young because the following few years just didn't follow through for him. Number 9 would be Keane Lynch. Brilliant midfielder for Limerick and has all his best years ahead as well. And number 8 was Richie Hogan, Kilkenny. Another Kilkenny man, number 7, Michael Finley, powerhouse midfield, centre back, could play him anywhere really, now gone into management awfully. Number 6, Tony Kelly. On song, this guy is brilliant to look at really, and you know, both club and county he's been fantastic. And number 5 was the one and only Larry Corbett. I suppose no one will ever forget the 3 goals he got, you know, against Kilkenny in that All-Ireland.
So, TJ, if I can come to you now, from 10 to 5, what is your order in ranking the best 20 hurlers over the last 20 years?
Jim, I'm in trouble already because I have to bow to Cyril's superior knowledge, obviously in all walks of life in hurling. And he's after naming 4 fellas there, right, that I didn't have included in my 10 at all. So I'm in bother before we start.
All right, don't worry.
I suppose to just recognise what Cyril said there, right, this is an impossible task that you set us, Jim. These are obviously some of the greatest hurlers of all time, not to mind the past 20 years. Some fantastic hurlers who have given hours of enjoyment, and it is probably unfair of someone like me to be leaving out a hurler of the year out of my top 10. It's a bit like, you know what I mean? Maybe somebody on standing on the ditch dropping somebody else, right? So it's probably not fair. But for the purpose of the exercise, I will give you my top 10, starting with the top 5. So at number 10 for me, I probably have started with midfielders and I'm kind of maybe unfair and defenders then. I'm all attackers all the way home, right? So number 10 for me was Jerry O'Connor. Unbelievable engine in the middle of the field. I just enjoyed him, came up against him a couple of times, struggled. Just a phenomenal hurler, stickman, wristman, unbelievable. Number 9 was Michael Finley, obviously the powerhouse of that great Kilkenny team. Just an unbelievable ox in the middle of the field. I think Brian Cody once referred to him as the strongest man that he ever came across, which is some statements coming from Brian Cody. Number 8 for me is a little bit of bias here. I've gone for Keane Lynch. I just think that it is early days for him. but you would go to a match just to see him hurl. He has that bit of wizardry and that little bit of magic that all the top really class players have. Number 7 for me is probably one of the greatest defenders of all time in JJ Delaney. And number 6 is the great Seanie Conlan, who's had a fantastic year for Tip. And whilst he's won Hurler of the Year only once, Jim, he's been runner-up on 3 different occasions. So in the last 10 years, been a phenomenal hurler. So that's my number 10 to number 6.
10 to number 6. And we'll just take your number 5 there, as we have, or Cyril gave his number 5 as well.
Oh, sorry, my number 5, I went for Tommy Walsh. Obviously, another guy who needs no introduction. Backs, midfield, forwards, one of the all-time greats of the game, and would have to be in anybody's, I suppose, list of top 10, I think.
Thanks, TJ. We'll come now to Seanie. Seanie, from 10 to 5, have you similar along the line of thinking of Cyril and TJ?
Kind of the same as TJ. That fellas that Cyril mentioned. I maybe I'm looking at it now. Okay. 10 against him. An incredible player. 4 All-Stars, and I suppose his goal ratio was unbelievable. In the 5 games he played in the year that he won the Hurler of the Year, he got 8 goals, phenomenal scoring record. Number 9, I've gone for Richie Hogan. Obviously his medal haul and his All-Stars and all that, but I just love looking at him as a hurler. He debuted in 2008. The massacre that Cork got, I think in 2009 he came as a sub against Cork that day in Nolan Park. It was my first real time seeing him live, and like TJ on about wrist work and that there, I just thought Richie Hogan had the most beautiful wrists. I'm him in at number 9. I'm after my own lads, Jordy O'Connor. TJ have him in as well, and had his golden era kind of that 04, 05, 06 period where he was just unplayable, and a player that kind of came in initially and he was struggling to make the Cork team, kind of 02, 03, but just took off in that golden era for Cork hurling where they got to 4 All-Irelands in a row, and he was integral in the 04, 05 and 06 team. Went for Larry Corbett, number 7. I think TJ said doesn't need much introduction earlier. Had that period as well started between 09, 10 and 11. Just looking at his stats, I mean, 19 goals, 6 goals in 09, 6 goals in 10 and 7 goals in 11. Like, that's just off the wall, to be honest. 6, TJ Reid. Maybe surprising to some days, not a bit higher, but just the category is so difficult to select from. With 4 All-Stars, still plenty in the tank, Hurler of the Year, no 5. And in that year, I thought against Galway and in the final itself, again against Galway, like he was just so integral. Got 1-9 in the Leinster final, 1-7 in the final, super hurler. And because there's such a biased, like TJ said, forward sort of selection in this, I tried to balance it with a defender. And for me, JJ Delaney was absolutely one of the greats. And even earlier in his career, obviously, as it went on, I think that what stands out for JJ was that a lot of players tail off as their career goes on. But even in his last year, he won an All-Star again that year. 7 All-Stars, 9 All-Irelands. And when Dan was having that great run in 04, he was one fella that probably nullified him in the semi-final. And going further back, when Satanta was having that brilliant year in 03, he probably, even though Satanta got a great goal in the final, he was the one player in that summer that curtailed him to an extent. So for me, JJ, number 5.
And we'll move now to Adrian Fenlon. And Adrian, are you along the similar line of thinking of Cyril, TJ and Seanie in relation from 10 to 5?
Not at all. It must be the Leinster view down here. Definitely controversy. I think TJ has said that he gave us an enviable job here. 18 outstanding hurlers of any generation, to be honest. And I had names down and I crossed them off and replaced them with others, and I had to cross those guys off and replace again. So really tricky job. But where I started was number 10 with Tommy Dunn of Toomavara and Tipperary, winner in 2001. An outstanding stick man, super midfielder, could play in the half forward line either, but just of that generation, he was just You know, he was genius with the ball. You know, didn't get enough, you know, awards, I suppose, in terms of All-Ireland medals, but certainly, you know, if he had been on that Kilkenny team, he would have had 9-10 All-Irelands like Henry, you know. So number 9 then, who hasn't been mentioned yet, but could be in people's top 5, is Owen Larkin. Again, Owen Larkin, I think, is one of those underrated players, but was absolutely central to that magnificent Kilkenny team. You know, outside the work race, which he was renowned for, he wasn't short of skill, he wasn't short of scoring, he wasn't short of strength and striking ability. He just had it all. You know, he was one of those players you just loving your team. Never looked for the limelight, was a great team player. Number 8, I suppose, was the Dodger himself. Going back to probably before a lot of people remember, was the year 2000 winner was Gordon Young Ireland's DJ. And again, at the time, you know, it's hard to compare players back in 2000, 2001 with players of 2019 and 20 and so on. But at the time, he was just genius. He was one of those players that just, you know, could a bit of a spark, and next minute, with a blink of an eye, it's a goal. You know, you mightn't see him for 15 minutes, and before you know it, you know, he has Wexford hearts broke or other teams' hearts broke. So fantastic ability of his generation. Number 7, and I found it hard to put this guy number 7 because I absolutely adore his style of hurling. Is your own Clare man down there, Jim, in Tony Kelly. Just an outstanding athlete, hurler and striker of the ball. I'd love to see him hurl for Wexford, to be honest. He just has everything from a midfielder for me. Like, he's striking on the run from 70, 80 yards. It's outrageous. You know, when he gets that left hand and the wrist moving through the ball. Like, it's hard to fathom, but that's some striking a ball 80, 90 yards on the run without breaking stride. So, you know, to me, he's one of, if not the best midfielders in the game. Number 6, another Kilkenny man, Tommy Walsh. I think he might have been in TJ's team there as well, but you know, numerous all-stars, half-back, midfield, half-forward, great utility man. And, you know, just a never say die attitude on top of his skill, his ability to fetch a ball for a man of small stature through crowds. Just, you know, a man scoring on him never seemed to bother him. He just, you know, he'd grind the teeth and he'd win the next ball. So he just, you know, he had that insatiable appetite to Cody and stick, but super hurler and lovely fella as well. And number 5, hard to fathom, but, you know, just, I suppose it talks to the standard of hurler we have here, but Seamus Conlan. And you know, he's been mentioned a few times, but, you know, he's been nominated for Hurler of the Year 4 times. You know, his scoring feats are outrageous, but yes, I can only get him at number 5 on the team of greats. So so that's my 10 to number 5, yeah.
I suppose, Cyril, if I can come to you first in terms of your 10 to 5, and just to bring up the 2016 winner, Austin Gleeson. A phenomenal hurler, a phenomenal year, very good with his club as well. People will talk about Austin in the future of Waterford hurler, and similar to the likes of Ken McGrath, and his sort of plump, in his sort of influence in the Waterford team. And for you, Austin, you think it's time for Austin as well to have another sort of breakout sort of year like he had in 2016, where he was just unplayable?
Yeah, he had a great year. Not only did he get senior player of the year, he got under 21 player of the year as well. He had a fantastic year. But see, Jim, when you have a great year as a young fella, it's the next year then it's very hard to do that again. And like, I don't think he came up to that. Now, it's hard to do. He didn't come up to the great heights for the next year. And maybe he lost his way a small bit. Like, you know, now he's a big cog in the Waterford team, because if they get him playing well, if he can dominate centre-back, which he's capable of doing, Waterford still have a very good team. And like, you talk about when Kim McGrath was going well, most flamboyant player. It's hard to believe that Kim McGrath didn't win All Ireland, in the sense he's one of the players that you'd love to have seen win one, because like, he deserved it. Fantastic player, good in the air, good in the ground, and could do things off the cuff. Now, Gleeson is the same kind of calibre of that, but he hasn't the longevity yet of what Ken did. You know what I mean? And that's what he has to aim to do. But I think he will, because, like, you know, Liam Cahill has got in there. I've seen him at a lot of college games during the year where there'll be only 10 at the match, or 5, or maybe, you know, maybe a few parents where he's watching it very close. And I believe that he hasn't kind of really tuned up again. I would now, hopefully there will be hurling either this year or whenever it happens again. You know, I know we have to take the health first, but like, Austin Gleeson has still a big bright future in front of him once he gets into shape and gets kind of, you know, really wants to do it again.
And in terms of this Waterford team that Austin sort of finds him in, compared to the team like that he's earmarked in terms of greatness, in terms of Ken McGrath, but maybe Ken McGrath had caliber players like John Milan around him, like Paul Flynn, Dan Shanahan. Does Austin have the same caliber of hurlers so he can go to the next level around him in this Waterford team?
I'd say he has. Like, it's just a matter of, I like to have Flamboyant players again, always able to score enough, and young lads like young Bennett that's coming through. I would love to see a Waterford team with Ty de Burke gone full back. Now, maybe he never played in it. I don't know. I saw him playing for UCD in it. Ty de Burke full back, Austin centre back, and build the backs around him and like go from strength to the backs, because they have players up front that are able to do things. On the day, they're a joy to watch and kind of can do fantastic things. But like, to me, like, they need Gleeson kind of more or less leading the team, because he's around a while now. Like, and if they get him back in song and Ty de Burke back in song, all these fellas, they'll have a good crack at no matter who they're playing.
And I suppose if I can bring you on to TJ now, a guy that's in Searles from 10 to 5, who's also in your 10 to 5, Michael Finnelly, a terrific hurler, a sort of the architect of the midfield domino when Kilkenny won in 2011. And it just all sort of action sort of midfielder was Michael Finnelly.
A powerhouse, very, very strong, good going forward, good. You can play him centre back as well. Kind of dominated the games with his presence. You know, I saw him one day against Galway, nearly beat us on his own, really, himself and Henry. Like, just his mere presence and his kind of physical strength, plus his reading of the game. Like, and he has a great longevity, like with the club. And of course, he comes from a great background. Like, you know, that tradition or that heritage is strong, like in his pedigree. Like, he's proven himself through the times, like, you know. Again, he's gone into management. Like, he's been a great hurler. Saw an old match the other night, and it was at Kilkenny went on to beat Tip, and one of the subs were on, or 2 or 3 of the subs. One was TJ Reid, and the other was Michael Finnelly. Just showing the quality of subs that were actually coming on the team. They're just starting that time. Just shows the way you have to kind of do your apprenticeship with Brian Cody and get on. And once they got on, of course, they didn't come off. Like, but a great player, and we'll put down as one of the greats.
And if I can come to you now, TJ Ryan, in terms of looking at your selection from 10 to 5, and you have the Cork great Jerry O'Connor at number 10. And I suppose when Cork were the dominant team in the country back in 2004, 2005, Jerry O'Connor was inspirational, TJ.
Inspirational, and Shani touched on it there, a great Cork team, and he was just huge in the middle of the field. What I would say is maybe his brother could probably feel a little bit left out here, because he was equally as good and equally as effective in that Cork team, and there wasn't much between them. But Jerry striking from the middle of the field, his point scoring, that was just phenomenal. And I also just say recently, right, that Jerry's a guard, right, and in the lockdown when I was going to work one morning, I got actually stopped by Jerry O'Connor. So I told him that any future votes, that Jerry was nailed on, that he was sorted, right. But I suppose on the serious side of it, in the middle of the field, like, Cork changed the game of hurling that time, right? We had the physicality of Kilkenny for a number of years before it. Cork introduced a little bit more possession-based, the running game, and there was probably nobody that more kind of suited that game than someone like a Jerry O'Connor, right? He was like a Formula 1 car in the middle of the field. I certainly wouldn't have been able to keep up with him in the middle of the field, and a lot of people couldn't. But he was all class.
You might have other ways of stopping him.
I would have had to adopt other ways, sir. You're right there.
And I suppose, TJ, if you're looking at in terms of Jerry O'Connor and the sort of forward line he had in that time with the likes of Shawnee inside there and Joe Dean, caliber sort of forwards, Jerry's role in relation to supplying the inside line as well, just giving that final pass as well to the players of real quality who know how to finish.
Yeah, and he was incredible for his club too at that time, and they went on to All-Ireland Club Day. But like, he just, as I said, he just epitomised the team and what they were trying to do at that time. Yeah, I struggled big time with like Shani and like Joe Dean mainly. They had a phenomenal forward line, and just guys who were very, very comfortable and very used to being in possession of the ball, and they just played that game very well. I suppose even on my top 5, when I was going through this earlier on today, right, like, take someone like Patrick Horgan, who's not in it, right, another phenomenal Cork hurler. Like, I was surprised Owen Kelly, actually, my memory didn't actually realise that Owen Kelly wasn't the hurler of the year, because you would think in Tipperary that he would have been another forward. And we touched on Ken McGrath. I suppose the other two were the 2 Mahers. Like, Paddy Maher has been a constant for Tipperary in over the last 10, 11 years. And the other fella who's been phenomenal, it's definitely in recent times, but in all areas of the pitch for tip and as some leader, is Brendan Maher. So there's just a couple of fellas that didn't make, obviously, that 18. But I suppose to go back to the question, Jerry O'Connor in the middle of the field, to me, that Cork era of dominance, he just epitomised that for me.
And I suppose, TJ, just in relation to your own man now, Cian Lynch, I suppose absolutely phenomenal in 2018, a great sort of stick hurler. He's in your from 10 to 5 along with Cyril's selection, and he was very instrumental in Limerick getting over the line and winning that All-Ireland, because when he came up with the moments of magic, it sort of inspired his teammates.
Yeah, and even Sunday night there, you see the goal he got against Cork, but massively influential in the current Limerick setup, the way they play, tactically, the way they move the ball, his physicality, his running, his brain, and his ability to bring, ever since his minor days, and I suppose, Cyril, you probably would have seen a lot of it in his minor days, he was just unbelievable number of possessions in the middle of the field. I think for an average midfielder at the moment, it might be maybe 20, 21, 22 possessions, right? In his minor days, he was hitting mid-30s. He was just unbelievable to get on the ball, that number of possessions. I think one of the criticisms Limerick people had of him was that he gave the ball away too much, that he could have shot more himself. But he's certainly scoring a little bit more now with his senior team. And I would say he is the key for the current Limerick team.
Yeah, and moving on now to Shawnee, in relation to your selection, you have Dan the Man at number 10, and Dan Shanahan went on to successfully a selector with Waterford as well. But Dan was the sort of go-to guy when Waterford needed that score, when they needed that point, when they needed that goal. He was the ultimate sort of the early target man in hurling, that if you wanted a guy, just drop it in front of Dan. He's good in the air, he's got great hands, and 9 times out of 10 he provided the finish as well, Shawnee.
Yeah, and again, a career, I suppose, Jim, that started, reasonably well, but just prospered into a phenomenal hurler. And his golden year, I suppose, was that sort of 04, 06, 04, 05, 06, 07 were his years, I suppose. But even up to the end, I remember the 2010 must have finally coming on, getting a great score, and had the cuteness on a wet Saturday night, to the summer's night, obviously, it was most replay, but he skimmed it off the ground and it caught Donald kind of on Donald's left side, the weaker side, I suppose. But and I always like those kind of players as well, that whose careers go through a different type of maturity. Like Dan was, he was a go-to player in the half-forward line in 98 and 99, 2000, but he was probably markable. But he developed, he showed self-confidence, he worked on his game, and he became unmarkable. And as I said earlier, like in a season, to get 8 goals in any season, you'll be lucky to get 8 goals in your career, but to get them in one season just goes to show what sort of a target man he was in a forward line that, had some super players. John Milan, you mentioned him earlier. Paul Flynn was one of the best hurlers I ever saw. And again, referencing what TJ said, it's gas when you're looking at this list and you see other names in the teams, like the Waterford teams, the Limerick teams, the Galway teams, and you see, it's just I thought he was a hurler of the year. Otherwise, as well, the likes of Ken and Paul Flynn didn't get there. But Dan, at the time, in a really, really good team, a team that captivated the whole audience, if you want, they captured the imagination. They were very unlucky not to win in All-Ireland. And he still went away with a great National League Hall, 4 Munster titles, but just became, and again referencing just a player that matured as he got older, he just became unmarkable and unplayable in that 04 to 07 sort of 4 year period.
And in Shawnee, in today's game, in terms of Dan's physique and stature, when you look at players that are currently out there that mark his attributes, would you say possibly the likes of John Conlan from Clare, very similar, Walter Walsh from Kilkenny, would they be the 2 players that would start to, in today's game, that would remind you of Dan Shanahan?
Probably Peter Duggan as well, say, on the Clare side. Like, I suppose, being very small myself, you'll often find in a match that the very small fella or the very big fella get the abuse. But we had a player in Cork as well for a while, Michael Cusson, Isaac O'Halty when he came on the scene. And when the big players would say, well, he'd always get targeted from the terraces. But yeah, they're superb players. And I met John Conlan, and it's actually great meeting those fellas. And obviously, he's a different era to me. I never played against John, but just about 40 minutes in the car park talking after, what a fabulous guy. A very humble and down-to-earth fella. But yeah, a good example, Jim. I suppose they're the sort of target men that can play in multiple positions as well. You can imagine John, if you're struggling, John Conlan throw him on the edge of the square, lump a few balls in and see if he can plug them out of the sky. And Dan regularly did that. I mean, he hovered between, I know, even in going back to Sean Oak, who was a brilliant halfback, and always troubling from puck outs. He was a great target man. So the example of the players you gave, aerially they're a huge target. And the game is changing. DJ referenced the Cork game in the noughties when it became a possession game. And the game as well now is continually evolving. But the crowd love a good, long, old-style puck out, and they love a good, big, 6-foot-odd fella to put the hand up the wall to Walsh's, the John Collins of these fellas. It gets the crowd going. They're a great, ploy for a team when you might have a lighter, say, forward line to feed off them and pick up some breaks. And as I said, they get the crowd going. So yeah, Dan was a super player in his day, and I think the examples you gave of the likes of Walter and John Conlan are good examples. They're still playing great stuff, and they too might be hurlers of the year at some stage.
And I suppose, Shawnee, in terms of just another guy, just to mention, he's on Cyril's list as well, and he comes in at number 9 for you, and number 8 for Cyril is Richie Hogan for Kilkenny. I suppose another sort of guy that sort of builds in the sort of the Podge Collins mode, the Conor Lahan sort of mode for Cork as well. Richie, a very skillful, sort of sticky sort of a hurler, great wrist, good off striking off both sides, and he definitely was in 2014 when Kilkenny needed that bit of rejuvenation to re-garnish their throne when people said it was the end of an era. Richie sort of stood up that year when people were expecting, well, TJ is going to be the main man. Richie took on the mantle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in that year, just looking at stats, he got 120 in 7 games, so he's plus 3 points a game. And that for me is the landmark, the target for any milestone for any forward. So you're going to be getting, for me, minimum 3 points. And that season he was phenomenal. I mean, for a fella that's exactly certain of his stats, he's about 5'7", 5'8", his aerial ability is phenomenal. Like Sir mentioned, the likes of Fenley and was it Owen Larkin or who came on in that? Was it the 09? Yeah, Fenley definitely came on. So you referenced someone else earlier. Felt that to serve their apprenticeship. I mean, Richie was one of those. He debuted in 08. Took him a while to find his feet. He all-starred first in 2011, which was a real Cody type of player in that you might be small, but you'll still put your hand up, and if the ball comes down, I expect you to win it. And again, Adrian would know Leinster hurling much, much better than me, but he's referenced some of the players in that Leinster style, which is slightly different to the Munster style, I suppose. But Richie, he got, I remember in 2012, they played Galway in a league game. He got a really bad injury, crack ribs, I think. But came back, tough as nails, aerially very strong. Yeah, similar to like Lehan and these guys, but carried the mental responsibility when there were huge players around him. Like Henry was around him, TJ was around him. Henry was coming to the end, and he stepped up and showed incredible maturity. And again, just referencing what I said earlier, Kilkenny gave Cork an awful last night when they came back in that after the strike in 2009. So it was my first. I went up to see the game. It was my first time seeing him, and he went in around kind of full forward, corner forward. And again, seeing a fella live versus maybe seeing him at underage stuff. Oh my God, I was just blown away when I thought he was an absolutely beautiful hurler, effortless off both sides. So for me, he's justifiably in there. I probably would have had a little bit higher. I actually had him higher initially, but I scratched him out. But love watching him. Teak tough, brilliant in the air, great scorer, brilliant averages, and always showed great maturity and strength in the big games. The games that counted, he always stepped up.
And if I can come on to you now, Adrian, I see a Kilkenny representative there in number 9, and a guy you know all too well throughout your playing career in Owen Larkin. A guy that probably came out of the shadows of some great Kilkenny forwards and really made a name for himself in 2008. We all knew Owen Larkin was a quality hurler, but never really garnished the limelight compared to some of more of these illustrious teammates.
Yeah, you couldn't have said a truer word, Jim. There's certain players somewhat underrated, let's put it that way, and especially in the esteem of that Kilkenny golden era. But like Owen Larkin, if you talk to any Kilkenny hurling fan or supporter, and you talk about the Kilkenny Championship, when you talk about James Stephens, it's Jackie Turle in the backs and Owen Larkin in the forwards. And James Stephens have been there at county semi-finals for a lot of the last 10, 15 years. And even now, up until recently, 2-3 years back, even though he was in the twilight of his career, Owen Larkin was still the man to stop for James Stephens, so he's highly rated in Kilkenny. Certainly, I would have seen the work rate and was, you just couldn't but marvel at the work rate, because you see this guy, you know, in the half back line, you know, doing the dirty work, you know, swamping up dirty ball, and literally 10 seconds later he's up in the half-hour line tapping over a point, you know. And this goes on for 70 minutes, like it's without fail. It's not just temporary. It was kind of, you know, the Cody ploy where the half-backs, you know, went back for puck outs and swarmed out the defence. But, you know, the expectation was these guys had to get back up into the scoring zone in record time. And, you know, he was just great. You know, he was, you know, it wasn't obvious, but his strength, you know, you speak about Michael Fennelly as being an ox, you know, a strong guy in the middle of the field. Owen Larkin was very similar in the half-forward line, you know, deceivingly strong, couldn't knock him off a ball, real strong set of ties, and you know, but loads of skill, loads of stamina, loads of just teamwork and work rate, and very unselfish with the ball. Numerous times he was in on goal himself, and he just laid off to a guy in a better position. He could have took the goal himself, but he passed it to a lad at the edge of the square, and that was probably Henry, and Henry got the limelight, but Owen didn't seek the limelight. And I'm not saying Henry did, but, you know, that was the type of player that Owen Larkin was. So I'd certainly raise him really highly, and it was very hard to pick him because, you know, we've spoken about the likes of Cian Lynch and Austin Gleeson there in some of the guys 10-6, and I would rate those guys extremely highly, but I just haven't seen it over I haven't seen the longevity. I haven't seen it happen year on year like Owen Larkin and some of these great Kilkenny players have done it for, you know, 10, 12, 13 years. So Cian Lynch for me is one of the best prospects the game has ever had, but I'd love to see another 3-4 years of that. We saw Austin a couple of years ago, and I think he's, like Cyril said, you know, a kingpin of that Waterford team. If Liam Cahill can get him taken, you have a great platform. So these guys, for me, they just need another couple of years to show that consistent performance that Owen Larkin has given year on year for Kilkenny.
And some people sort of forget the sort of brilliance of Tommy Dunn, because it seems it's so long ago now, in 2001, 19 years ago when he won the All-Ireland. It's hard to think that it's that time. You think Tommy was only like playing 10 years ago, but it's 2001 that going all the way back to when he won the All-Ireland. I suppose Tommy Dunn, when you're looking at midfielders of Tipperary, there's no doubt he's probably one of the best midfielders Tipperary's ever produced. And when you look at the quality of players that Tip have played midfield, like Brendan Maher and stuff like that, Tommy was just he was good mopping ball up around the half-back line, taking ball from his half-backs, good breaking forward onto his half-forwards, getting ball in it, and a guy who's well able to score as well. So he was a quintessential all-around midfielder.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you've said it all there, Jim. You know, a great stick man as well as everything else with vision. You know, that spatial awareness and vision that all great hurlers have. You know, and you know, Tommy's went on to be a well-renowned coach. I think he was with Dublin a few years back. He was obviously with Liam Sheedy. He's been with Tip for a few years and really well respected. Just loves the game of hurling. You know, one of those died in the wool in Tumavara, but you know, just a great lover of hurling and gave so much to the Tip jersey. And you're right, you know, it's only 19 years ago. It seems 40 years ago. Unfortunately, we all age a bit, and the modern game has moved on so well. But there's players of that era that would easily fit into the modern style of hurling, and I think Tommy is one of those. Like some of the players 20 years ago that probably wouldn't be able to adjust. But Tommy had that fitness, the stick work, the vision, you know, short passing, long passing, and he was a very good free taker as well, which is forgotten about as well. He was, you know, very accurate on the dead ball.
And how do you think, before we move on, how do you think Tommy Dunn would have fitted into the 2019 version of Tipperary under Liam Sheedy? Where would you envision the role for Tommy in that?
Yeah, it's hard to know because it's such a different style of hurling. But I'd say he still would have been a midfielder. You know, he would have adjusted to the, like I suppose he's, you know, Brendan Maher is probably the modern Tommy Dunn for me. Yeah. You know, it's kind of they're kind of, you know, you have to put 20 years in the difference between both players. But you know, if Tommy had 20 years on him, to me, he'd be very similar to a Brendan Maher type player. That's the caliber of the guy. And I think it was TJ mentioned Brendan Maher for me is a player who has been in outstanding form over the last 2 or 3 years, and it's amazing he's not on this list. You know, he'd certainly be in that league. Yeah.
And I suppose, Sir, we'll move on now to the second part. And if I can get your number 4 to 2, we leave out your number 1 for the moment, Sir, and we'll come back to that as we build up the excitement. But, Sir, if I could have your 4 now to number 2. So that's 4, 3 and 2, Sir.
Well, my 4 would be Joe Kenny, you know. I suppose along with Tommy Welch, to kind of both joint force really. The two of these guys would be off and on one another directly and indirectly. The way the modern game is going, Jim, like numbers don't mean anything. If you're a forward, any back could be on you, or vice versa. Like Tommy Welch, for a small guy, brilliant in the air, great catch the ball. To me, he never bothered about the opposition. He just covered the half-backs the whole time, got the ball, delivered fast, and like he played hard, got it hard, but he never stood down. And he was typified by the day he got the belt in All Ireland from, was it Benidorm? He just went back up again. Like that's the way they play, and that's what you like to see. Joe Cannon, fantastic talent, like probably one of the best hurlers Galway ever had. Has it both left and right, kind of, you know, good on the stride, great free taker, but great player, and can take the game by the scruff of the neck. And as like some of the lads are referred to, like starting off was very good, but like has developed over time into a great player and a great leader. My number three would be TJ Reid. Like again, this guy, like it's like a conductor of an orchestra, the way he kind of, you know, left-handed, kind of the Kit Oak style, but beautiful on the ball, doing great things. And like when a lot of the leaders had left Kilkenny and now they're kind of going through a little poor patch compared to their standards, he's standing up tall both for club and county, like, and every day he goes out, like he's leading the attack, he's taking the frees, he's doing everything really. He's very hard to mark. Number two would be another Kilkenny man, DJ Carey. Like again, you see, we're inclined to think of the lads that are kind of near to us that have played lately. But when you go back and the annals a bit, like DJ was a fantastic player, like he had fantastic skill, could make the ball talk, and the scores he got. I remember one day I was over a team playing, we were playing Galway, playing Kilkenny, we were leading well at half time, and single-handedly, now he was on a fairly good team as well, but single-handedly in Hurlers, he just took off, and lads were saying, why didn't such a lad mark him? So we all were marking him, but like there was no one able to mark him. Simply he was just different class. And like again, stood the test of time, and these Kilkenny lads, like they were very good. They came on, you know, the one crowd led to another crowd, and the present team has just passed away now. They passed on, like they were really unbelievable. That we're all so good and so together, led by Brian Cody, and since he kept them all going. So they're my top 2 or 3 there, and you have to get to number 1 yet. He's still king of the castle.
And TJ, just in relation to you now, TJ Ryan, could I have your 4 to 2, please?
Yeah, good news. And myself and Cyril are back in sync with our selections here. So things are okay. Yeah, my top 4 players are 4 forwards, 4 leaders, and 4 guys that every single day that they took the pitch, they were very much a marked man, and they still were able to come out on top day in, day out. They were 4 free takers and just phenomenal to watch. Game changers every single day. When it came down to, I suppose, maybe that piece of the game where the game was there to be won, these guys more often than not came up trumps. So the order is tricky. I'm sure we could probably all argue it for until 12 o'clock tonight, and nobody would be right, nobody would be wrong. So my number 4 is DJ. I marked him actually a good long number of years ago. Just a phenomenal player, and as Cyril said there, just one for the ages, DJ Carey. Number 3, like we argue about this guy at home regularly to say that he could potentially be one of the greatest of all time, TJ Reid at number 3. His ability to carry teams at the moment, be it Ballyhale when they come under pressure, just to get a score or win that free. Last year in the semi-final against Limerick, when work rate was just off the charts, TJ Reid's ball-willing ability, the amount of balls, and I think it was probably the first time I've seen last year, Cyril, where a guy in the forwards got man of the match on a number of occasions without actually scoring from play, probably told the story of TJ Reid, the amount of work he does for this Kilkenny team. And it's probably a little bit different to the likes of maybe a Richie or an Owen Larkin or these boys, in that TJ has probably found himself on a Kilkenny team that hasn't been as strong maybe as previous times. So he's carrying it just literally, nearly, I won't be unfair to the other guys, but like literally single-handedly, day in, day out. His free taking just percentages are unbelievable. So for him, he's at number 3 for me. And maybe in time, maybe another year or 2, he might go all the way to number 1. And number 2 for me is Joe Canning. Just the king of the stick men. Watching him again there recently on some of the old games. He's line ball taking. He's dead ball taking, right? Even in the final, Cyril, that Limerick won, even when they were out of it, right? Joe single-handedly brought Galway back into that game. He's 21-yard free. Again, was just a sight to just be there to see. Nobody saw it in the top corner. Just has had, I suppose, the onus of having to carry Galway hurling for a number of years, and has done it incredibly well. Galway are probably going to struggle in life without a Joe Canning, and I don't know where the next Joe Canning is coming from. but again, one for the ages. And I think if we're here in 20, 30, 40 years' time, I think we'll be talking still about players like Joe Canning. So for me, to recap, DJ at 4, TJ at 3, and Joe Canning at 2.
And Seanie McGrath now from 4 to 2. What is your selection?
Yeah, my second defender gets in there, Jim. So I've Tommy Walsh at number 4. Look, doesn't need a whole pile of an intro. That speaks for themselves. 9 All-Irelands and 9 All-Stars. The rerun of the games lately showed the 09 final against Tip. And you kind of see, looking at the Lark Corbett ended up trying to mark him a couple of years later, like the amount of ball that he was getting and winning All-Stars in multiple positions, even though I just referenced him as a defender. But again, looking at his stats, Tommy played over 50 odd games and scored 136. And some of those scores as well came from the half-back line. They weren't always when he started. He started actually, I think, as a kind of a forward, and he played midfield in the 2003 final. But just his ability to play in multiple positions, again, it referenced with Richie Hogan, his aerial ability for a man that wasn't that tall. Jesus, Tommy was only 5'8", 5'9", but his strength in the air and often came up and maybe was targeted in his earlier part. Maybe people thought he was a bit naive, not naive, but maybe just a little bit of a weak spot there because of his height disadvantage. But players much taller than he was able to outlead them, and he was a phenomenal hurler. Look, Joe Canning is in there. He's number 3 for me. He could have been 3, 2 or 1. I agree with the two lads before. Like, he was just incredible. And again, another amazing stat. You look at goal getting again. Obviously, you knew always on the goal getter in your team, but for a guy that's played 50 odd games so far, he's every 2 games. I mean, if you're buying players in the Premiership, that's gold or stuff. You know, you're talking about 50, 60 million for a player like that in soccer terms. So from a goal scoring ability, from a club ability, 4 club All-Irelands, just has all. Again, Cyril would know him from the Fitz days. He was a phenomenal Fitzgibbon player as well below in LIT. And TJ references kind of penalty, 21-yard taken, his line ball taken. Some young fella got a kind of clip on his phone and put it up on YouTube or Twitter or something later behind the All-Ireland when he took that line ball in the first half. It was a great shot, and it gave you a real snapshot of how far out he was and the angle he was at, and it was like a beautiful golf shot onto the green straight over the bar. And this is where it gets contentious between 2 and 1. I've gone for Henry, number 2. Again, scratch the change from 1, put him back to number 2. Just battles him as a hurler. That's phenomenal altogether. Played, what did he play? 71 championship games, the highest amount of games for any player. The longevity was phenomenal. His debut year was 99 against us. You could even see at that stage, we played him in a league game down in Barclay Ring. Kind of tall, brawny, scrawny lad. But you could see his ability from the off and just got better and better as the seasons went on. His average for Kilkenny is around 8 or 9 points. Like, to get that over 10 or 20 games, you'd say fair enough, but to get it over 70 odd games, I think the one thing that kind of distinguishes Henry from the other players is I'd find it hard to find a game that he was poor in. He was always minimum 7 out of 10 and north of 7, 8, 9. And like that's really the difference between good, very good and brilliant is consistency. For me, he was just an unbelievably consistent player. 11 All-Stars, 10 All-Irelands, and as you said earlier at the intro, 3 hurler years, like an incredible player. So, but look, I really tied with him at number 2 and number 1, but I went for someone else at number 1, and I'll talk about him in a minute. He was my favourite player of all time.
And I suppose now I'll bring you on to Adrian. Adrian, if I can have your 4 to 2, please.
Yeah, I went for really difficult choices, of course, but I went for number 4, TJ Reid. So I think he's in all our top 5 or top 4. But fantastic hurler. Again, deceivingly strong. You know, probably 6'1", 6'2". I remember standing up beside him. I didn't think he was as tall. He doesn't look as tall, togged out, but he's no small man. Great aerial ball-winning ability, super in fact, you know, and just, you know, he's free taking. I think TJ mentioned, like, his percentage, you know, scoring from frees is phenomenal, time after time after time. He very seldom has an off day on the frees, you know, and that's part of the reason, you know, a so-called weak in Kilkenny of recent have been thereabouts, you know, knocking on the door, because they have probably the best free taker in the game, and it's so important in the modern game. So but a lovely guy, very humble guy, you know, again, typical of the Cody era, you know, a team player first and foremost, and you know, a scorer secondary, you know, to all that. So yeah, so TJ, my number 4. Number 3, I went for Cyril's Galway man, Joe Canning. You know, you know, again, if this guy was with Kilkenny or Tip, he'd probably have, you know, 3, 4, 7, 8 All-Irelands, who knows. Delighted, I think the whole country was delighted in 2017 when he eventually got that Celtic Cross, which was so deserving. But, you know, again, time after time carrying Galway. You can see what Galway are like without Joe. They're just devoid of idea. They're devoid of leadership up front. So when he's in their attack, it ticks and he makes it tick. So, you know, to carry all that weight on a county shoulders for the last 10, 11, 12 years and yet deliver time after time, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal and consistent performances. So Joe, striking ability was being mentioned, you know, whether it's a sideline or free, it's just effortless. It's like he's hitting a big Bertha or a Callaway or whatever just all the time. It's just floating and phenomenal. Number 2, I went for who I believe is the best, certainly the best defender I've ever seen in the game is JJ Delaney. You know, so a lot of those to get the credit are scoring forwards, as we're seeing in the lists and the choices. But, you know, the art of defending is just as important, and it doesn't go as well noticed because they're not scoring huge amounts every game. But JJ Delaney, for me, is probably the finest defender I've ever seen. The previous, that was probably Joe Hennessy, sir, back in the early 80s. He was fantastic with Kilkenny as well. But JJ had everything. He was strong in the air. He was great striker, hook and block, and just teak, tough. And not dirty, just tough, typical Kilkenny back that, you know, played on the edge, but fairly on the edge. And, you know, you knew you were after having a game after marking JJ. And if he came out on top, you were one of a few over 10 or 12 years that came out on top. He, like that half back line for Kilkenny in the noughties, you know, himself and Tommy and these guys, you know, just phenomenal. And that was the springboard. A lot of people forget that, but that was the springboard for their success. Very few teams could break down that half back line, and that really led to their dominance. And JJ certainly led from the front there. And then ultimately he ended up full back, which was a position he didn't probably want to play in. I think he said that, but by God, he adjusted fairly well to the full back position, and wouldn't we all have a full back like that? Yeah. So he's my number 2.
And I suppose, Cyril, just about your from, say, one of your players that we haven't mentioned so far that came in at number 6 for you. Before I bring you on to Tommy Walsh, Cyril, Tony Kelly from Clare. I know Tony personally. He's a club mate of mine here. He plays hurling with Ballyea. He plays football with my club, Clondigad, as well. I suppose Tony burst onto the scene really in 2013. A prodigious minor, won everything in terms of minor, 2 minor All-Irelands with Clare, followed up on under 21 hurling All-Ireland with Clare. And there was can he transition to the senior game? And I suppose Tony transitioned to the senior game very, very quickly and very easily, sir.
Oh yeah, like Jim, an unbelievable hurler. I was involved with LIT first years, and I went Anthony Daly was manager, and we came across this fellow in first year called Tony Kelly, and he was just different. Oh, I knew him from the minor scene anyway, but he was a different talent even then. Like, and he went on, like he's kind of like he, on his toes. He's like, he reminds you of kind of a gazelle or a deer, just kind of floating along the whole time. And when he's in full flow, he's a joy to watch. And then he went on to the Clare team, and sure, like, you know, on song, he's unbelievable. And sure, like the championship that Ballyea won that year, like the win from strength to strength. And again, he was the driving force. And like as a boys, the first there, every game he goes out in, lads are kind of say cutting down his space, man marking him, or even double man marking him. And it doesn't seem to matter. And like when he gets, like he's good at both sides. Even taking frees and notice he's right side and left side. Now I much prefer him on the left side, but like he's able to take them both sides. He's a fantastic talent, and like he's not number 1 here in our list yet, but like he has the potential to go on and be a number 1. Like, and he's going to be again, like, you know, like Brian Lohan seems to be getting a lovely tune of him. He's out midfield at the moment, like, and you know you can see Clare reaping the benefits by this, like covering the ground. That's what he likes to do. Just let him flow and play his own game. He's a joy to watch. He's one of the present kind of guys like up there with TJ and these as people go to matches to see.
And I suppose, sir, in terms of Brian Lohan coming in Clare, in terms of Tony progressing, Brian has gone back to what he knows best in what won All-Irelands for Clare back in 1995 and 97, off the cuff, route sort of hurling. And that's probably going to suit Tony's game, because it means he's going to be coming in off an awful lot of breaking ball from the half-hour line. If the ball is going direct and long, there's going to be second breaking ball. And for a guy like a strike runner, there's probably no better strike runner in the game than Tony Kelly.
Oh yeah, once he gets on the broken play, like, it's very hard to stop. As one of the boys said, once he's in stride, it's hard to block. But you see, like, Jim, the game has changed the last few years. It's kind of you sharp puck out, you get to a cornerback, you walk the ball through the lines. Now it's lovely in its possession hurling, but it does mean that when it breaks down, it's stopped, of course. But like, it causes a lot of rooks, and by the time it gets to the forwards, they're all getting low with possession. Whereas the old style was, a good cornerback might cook a corner forward, and one good clip is gone up the pitch, but you had to fight for your ball. Now, definitely, Brian Lohan and Sean Tracy's gone in there as well, and he'd be much the same as Lohan, to be kind of saying, hey, you're big enough or good enough to fight for your own ball. Now, it means you have to fight for possession, and they are playing it more direct. But like, you can play both ways, and a bit sharp at time. But the modern game is kind of working through the lines, and people say, like, the lads are very fit now and very, very skillful. But in actual fact, the game, instead of getting faster, is actually getting slower, because everyone is getting possession, take it up, look around, hand pass it, crisscross the pitch, walk it through the lines. Whereas before, you just got it and shifted it. It wasn't as controlled. But that kind of say direct game suits Tony Kelly, because he's able to get on broken play. He'll score as many points in play, Jim, on balls coming out from the attack as balls going in, because he'll be coming in on the breaking ball. And all the good hurlers, like, left, right, he's capable of doing that.
And sir, I'll bring you on now to your selection from 4 to 2. And the guy I want to mention there, Tommy Walsh, I suppose a legendary defender for Kilkenny, one of the all-time greats, revolutionised his role at wing back. And for a guy sort of small in stature, he was feisty, he was tenacious, and he was the guy, the ultimate Duracell bunny of a type sort of player was Tommy Walsh. He just sort of never ran out of energy.
Yeah, the Duracell is right, like, full of energy, great player. First game I saw him playing for Kilkenny was against Galway in the league game. He was corner forward, and like, he was being marked. He was small, like, he's not extra big, but he got back. You could play him anywhere. But we got back at that time. He was facing the ball, saw only the ball, and like, again, Jim, he was good enough to sweep across the half back line. Didn't actually, he marked the man, but he was more or less marking the ball. He preferred to go to the ball the whole time, and Adrian referred to it there. The Kilkenny boys, like, they played hard on the edge, but they go hard for the ball. It's all about getting the ball first with these guys. That's what Tommy played as well, like, very flamboyant. Like, he's the same now the whole time. We play a charity match. TJ there played a few years ago for cancer, and like, Tommy plays like, he plays it as if this is an Ireland final. That's the way they play. They play that out, like, and they know no different. And like, he's larger than life. He's a great ambassador for hurling. Like, and it was nice to see him this year win his club championship with 2 in a row. Like, it made probably much from his All-Ireland he's won, which shows what the GA is all about.
And I suppose TJ Ryan, if I could come to you, a guy that just missed out on your top 5, but came in at number 6. He, as you mentioned, he came runner-up so many times in the All-Ireland Hurler of the Year. He was bound to get one, and he got it when Tipperary won it only last year. And I suppose Seanie Conlan stood up to the role. Liam Sheedy came back in. Liam Sheedy made him the main guy, and he was the sort of focal point around the attack, which the guys of John McGrath sort of fed off of, in terms of, he got Noel McGrath sort of revolution. It all spearheaded around Shamey's, the catalyst inside there, sort of the driving leader, and he sort of got the best out of all the rest of the Tipperary forwards around him, TJ.
Yeah, he certainly has done that. He's done that for a number of years now, and again, talking about consistency. Like Shawnee spoke about the importance of scoring goals. Like, Shamey has that feat of scoring a goal in every game last year, which is difficult. To get a goal in any game is difficult, but to get a goal every single day, he's been kind of the leader and the pinpoint of that Tipperary attack for a good number of years now. And Shamey's around a long time. Like, he's playing 10, 11 years with this tip. He's been consistent, and he's been runner-up for Hurler of the Year in the years 14, 15 and 16, and eventually winning it the year just gone, and captaining his team to win in All-Ireland, which is just phenomenal. An incredible player, just a big, I won't say an old-fashioned full forward, like, ball winner, very dangerous, and he has that goal sense. He's looking to put teams away. I've been at the wrong end of it on a number of occasions, but just a fantastic player. A very good Tipperary forward line now, let me add. They play a nice brand of hurling, they play good ball, but he is key and he's pivotal to that team. And I think he's deserving of just being mentioned with these really good players. He's scoring again, very good. And Sheedy definitely gets the best out of him, and Eamon O'Shea and those guys. He seems to really revel when those guys are around.
And he's probably TJ. I was going to say, yeah. Sorry,
Jim. He was probably unlucky not to win Player of the Year before he actually won it in the years just gone. Like, he has been a phenomenal player for the last 4 or 5 years.
TJ, I just mentioned a guy you mentioned. You said you had the wonderful duty of marking him once or twice. The legendary DJ Carey. I suppose no one thought in Kilkenny after DJ Carey another legend would arrive so quick, but DJ was the man himself, and Charlie Carter, the sort of tandem, the duo of the 90s sort of hurling. It was the DJ and Charlie show most days out, and DJ was just the goal assassin, really. He just took the life out of teams in terms of those sucker punches goals that he got at so many critical stages throughout the match. Just really drained the life out of oppositions.
Yeah, I see Adrian kind of smiling there and probably thinking back over definitely a certain number of games that had happened. But look, like I know we're talking about the last 20 years, and obviously DJ's the year 2000, but maybe through the 90s he was just phenomenal. Like DJ definitely changed hurling. Like he was obviously, do you know what I mean, a really popular player for Kilkenny. He was just extremely skillful. I think it was Cyril that said in commentary there through the 90s that there'll only ever be one DJ Carey, and he was like effectively just kind of an artist in the forward, just could do anything with the ball, could make it talk, and he basically was, I suppose, one of the best players of all times. I did play against him. He had it all. He had speed, but he just had that craft to get scores, critical time. I know now that different people might talk about steps and different things, but the bottom line was when needed most, DJ Carey scored.
And DJ Carey, a very sort of elusive sort of forward. Just when you thought there was no real danger, all of a sudden he comes to life. He's always the guy that seems to pop up at the right moment. He's sort of instincts, his intuition in terms of getting to the place at the right time. His reading of the game in terms of just finding himself in that poacher position. He was like the Alan Shearer of hurling in terms of...
Yeah, Shawnee spoke about strikers and £100 million players basically back in the day, and that these guys didn't grow on trees. There was only a certain number of them around, and DJ was certainly one of those. When Kilkenny were in trouble, he scored goals. He dug them out of hole, time in, time out, and he was one of those. Yeah, as you said, Alan Shearer. You can compare him to some of those guys because he just was a leader of that team, and he just changed the face of hurling there, and like it's probably grown all the way from the 90s to the 90s to where it is now. And I know you spoke about fellas like Cian Lynch and Tony Kelly and Austin Gleeson, and these guys probably have the ability to bring crowds to matches, to keep hurling where it is basically as one of the greatest sports of all time, and to make people go to games. And we're all probably longing for them now, but certainly going back in the 90s, DJ Carey had that ability.
And I suppose, Shawnee, I'll speak about a guy that came in 7th for you before I bring you on to selection in your top 5. Hasn't mentioned so far Lark Corbett. And Lark Corbett, when you score a hat-trick in an All-Ireland, you're definitely going to deserve attention and credit. And Lark was probably the guy who was sort of behind Owen Kelly for a year or two and then sort of outpassed him in some regards.
Yeah, and I suppose everyone thinks of that period when he was getting all those goals, that sort of 9, 10, 11 period. But it was referenced earlier about Tommy Dunn. Lark Corbett was on the same team. Lark Corbett was a key corner forward in 2001 as a raw 19, 20-year-old. I saw him down the park against Limerick, TJ, I'd say. Yeah, the most of the final in 2001 was against Limerick. And just... wasn't terribly effective, but was getting on the ball. He was only a young fella. The occasion didn't seem to faze him. That was what stood out to me for a raw young fella just making a kind of a debut season. We just seemed to handle it. He was playing kind of forward. Declan Ryan, one of the elder statesmen, was kind of keeping an eye out for him. But you could see the independence in Lars' play. Struggled a little bit, and maybe the hamstrings, stories from him later on in his book, and that the hamstrings gave him trouble. But certainly just took fire. Just got his groove. The type of game that Tipperary were playing really suited him. Fast-moving ball. He started to click brilliantly with Owen Kelly, and fellas outside him, like, fellas that weren't of as high caliber, or well, not high caliber, but as recognised. Maybe fellas like John Ryan in the half-forward line, second types of players that were winning ball in the air and throwing it around beautifully. They played to a certain pattern, which absolutely fit completely into Lars' game. And as you said, like the 3 goals, like will go down in history as, super goals, crucial goals, goals that came at the right time before halftime, or then to put the sucker punch into the Cats. And he was so mad that he even went. I don't think any player would go and do what he did against Tommy Walsh. Like, it was an insane thing to do, really. They were probably concocting it for a couple of weeks leading up to it. But he was so kind of mad. He said, "No, let's have a go off it." And obviously, it affected his own game. And was controversial, and he probably, as a forward, should have played his own game. But he had that off the cuff. I'll do it for the team. You know, he was a real team player. And I love watching him. But I just, going back, everyone seems to kind of remember the latter stages of his career and how good he was. But I always think of the early days. And I always remember that game. And it was a good Limerick team. They beat us in the first round in the park in 0-1. TJ, like, they were a good side, very, very unlucky. I think you were beaten by Wexford later on in the year, TJ. He stepped up. I'm not sure it was McDonough or someone. Fine and able for a young fella. You could see that he had self-confidence, that he had a good, mature brain in him for a young fella. And I just love going to matches to see him again, goal-getting. He was just phenomenal. Kind of he kind of held the hurley long. He hardly ever shortened it. He had that ability to skill on off his left and right. Held the Kittoak style, with a smashing hurler, and could have been higher. From again, like we've all said it, all these fellas could be potentially number one. I put him at 7, but 19 goals in 3 seasons, off the wall stuff.
And I'll give you the duty now of talking about, I couldn't let a Galway man talk about Joe Canning, so I said I'll give it the duty of a Cork man, the honour of talking about Joe, because Cyril might be talking about Joe till midnight. So, Seanie, Joe Canning for you. Well, I suppose, look, one of the best free takers of all time, probably one of the best sideline ball takers of all time, and probably off the snap sort of shooters in terms of instinct, just getting the ball, turning on a swivel, and Joe 9 times out of 10 on the dime.
Yeah, and like we're on about hurlers of the year, but people forget that Joe was a young hurler of the year as well. He won young hurler of the year in his debut year in 08. And that 08 season, I suppose, as a Cork, when I remember it, because being in Thurles that night, Cork had a fantastic win. They came from the death, really. God, we were well up at half time. I mean, the game is synonymous, I suppose, with Donal Oak sort of piggybacking Joe and pulling him down and getting sent off, and I think Joe getting the resulting penalty and clinging it again as a young fella. But like, again, was an independent type of guy. I think he took a break from hurling for a while as well after his minor grade, between, the minor and senior period. Obviously, he had a lot of hurling done by 18, 19 years of age. Took time out, which to me suggested a guy that was fine and independent, knew exactly what he wanted from life and from the game of hurling. But, I referenced it earlier, 27 goals in 55 championship games today, young hurler of the year in 08 and 17. And again, when you're looking at a spread, like to win an All-Star in 08 and then 10 years later to win another one in 18, like that's kind of serious stuff. A lot of fellas that we've mentioned, have won them within, certain periods of 3 and 4 year windows. But to win an All-Star 10 years later, I mean, that is phenomenal. It goes to show just what a hurler he is. You reference it yourself, Jim. Free taking, 21s, penalties, line balls, and scores from play. The standout one, of course, 2 standouts are the catch and the swivel in the Leinster final at 15. Yeah, and that last minute point, which will be forevermore against Tipperary, they were 2 super scores.
And I suppose, Adrian, it brings you on. We've nearly everyone talked about, so you get the honour of talking about 2 guys in your top 4. We'll start off with your number 4 selection, Kilkenny man. And I'm sorry to say, Adrian, these are 2 Kilkenny men you have to talk about now. So we'll start with the first one, TJ Reid.
Yeah, I was just looking at the top 10 before we started, Jim. There was 6 Kilkenny lads in it, which maybe a little bit of bias towards Leinster here, yeah, even though we have no love for Kilkenny, as you know, Wexford. But yeah, TJ, I think I mentioned before, in terms of TJ, just phenomenal. What I have to say about, most of these hurlers of the year over the last 20, I know most of them bar maybe some of the younger lads, but they're all so modest. There's no arrogance, there's no narcissism, they're just genuine, decent guys, and I think that has to be said as well. A lot of us here on the call know these guys, and they're just normal citizens, so no airs of graces. They're not Premiership footballers walking around in a Ferrari, they're just normal Joe Soaps and lovely guys. But yeah, TJ is phenomenal. Like, we've spoken. There was DJ back in the early noughties, finishing up his career. Then Henry came along, King Henry, and he was the carrying the mantle up front. And TJ really for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years since Henry's kind of departed has been really leading at the front for Kilkenny, with probably Walter Welsh, the other kind of twin tower up there, I'd call him. If you can tame TJ and Walter in the game, you're going a long way to beating Kilkenny. I know that's up front, but yeah, just unerring accuracy from frees. But like most of these guys we're talking about, it's the team play. you know, to take the right options, you know, to see what's on, and if there's a player in a better position to throw the ball out. So there's no greed or avarice here. Like, it's all for the team, you know, and that's why many of these players are hurlers of the year, because that's what they are. They're team players. But yeah, no, TJ for me, you know, as somebody mentioned earlier on, it might have been Shawnee, that, you know, maybe in another 2, 3, 4 years, if TJ keeps performing at the level for the next couple of years, he could be up, you know, at the top of the league here, you know, because he is another 3 or 4 years. I'm not sure, Cyril, what age he is. I think he's 29, 30, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, so he probably has another 3, 4 years, you know, playing centre forward. Probably will go rotate into full forward eventually. You know, so I wouldn't like to be marking him in the full forward line and tell you in 2 or 3 years' time he'd be fairly dangerous with a high ball coming in on the edge of the square. I wouldn't like being a full back putting a hand up with him. But and then I think you asked about JJ as well, Jim. Yeah, like the only thing about JJ, he was kind of unfortunate on the club scene. You know, he played with Johnstown Fenians, who were thereabouts, you know, in the Kilkenny Championship, you know, never really making it far. Most of the other players we spoke about have played with club teams that have been, you know, in All-Ireland club finals, you know, quite a bit. The likes of Henry and Joe Canning with Portumna, TJ, you know, a lot of these players, you know, have really, you know, brought it on with the club. But, you know, JJ came from, you know, an average club in Kilkenny, but he really set himself out as probably, as I said, one of the best defenders ever in the game. For me, the best defender ever in the game. But I think he would be well held up there to be one of the best ever amongst all. But he just had everything. Like, a little knack of, you know what, you know, playing on the edge I mentioned earlier on. But for me, it was a subtle foul. He used to just, you know, catch you with the right hand in the back of the helmet and just, you know, knock your head off guard literally a second before the ball was coming down on you. And it was just enough to knock the half forward line off. And before you know it, JJ had the ball up on the other, you know, the other end of the field. He was, you know, just, they were so crafty, so cute. You know, you have to appreciate that. You know, it's like the hurler going up, flicking the hurl from the opposition's there and catching it. You know, most referees would blow that for a free now. I think that's a tremendous skill, you know, to be able to do that, going up in full flight and knocking opposition's hurl out of the way and catch it. But it's deemed a free. But a lot of those Kilkenny players were just gifted at that. I don't know if they trained for it or whether it came from a young age, you know, playing in the primary school yard. But, you know, it's just something that's so hard to get right, and they were gifted, and JJ was the master for me, yeah.
And I suppose that we now come to the elusive number one. And I say for 3 of you, I know who your number one is going to be. So we'll just we'll go in categorical order. So we'll go, Cyril, first of all, for you, your number one, please.
Yeah, Henry Shefflin, like I christened him King Henry a long time ago. First time I saw him, Jim, was up close and was playing for Waterford IT. And I asked the boy, I said, where's this fella from? And they said, Kilkenny. I said, oh, Jesus, another lad for Kilkenny. Like, you know, he was fairly good. But I watched him closely. And the first game he played for Kilkenny to me was intermediate. He didn't, you know, like he wasn't the star growing up. You know what I mean? Now, I thought he was good for Waterford. He was beginning to mature as he got on. And then, of course, he blossomed. Listen, like to our, I'm talking about Galway now, say. So one of the he beat us on his own. Just he had the ability to take the game by the scruff of the neck. Playing well or playing, but like really playing well and turned into a great leader. And as it went on, he became more of a leader. And again, like Adrian has referred to there, like could take all the punishment, played hard, but played very fair. Great sportsman, you know what I mean? And like what he has done is unreal. But it's hard to believe. Going back further, you had the likes of Eddie Kerr for Kilkenny. And then you had DJ Carey for Kilkenny. And then you know what I mean? I'm talking about forwards now. Now you have Henry. And now you have TJ Reid. Like they keep producing, you know, these kind of flamboyant players. And okay, they mightn't have as good, some of them might have as good a players around him. Now Henry had great players around him. Undoubtedly he came in a great time. But he was a great player. And there was one game against Galway. I think we're well up at half time. In the second half he came out and took over. And another All-Ireland against Tip, which now does. He wasn't going that well, and Tip got a 21 penalty, and he stood up and took the ball in the back of the net. Even not play or to that time, and when the big shot had to be taken, Henry was the man to do it, and he kept doing it. Of course, with the club, like he did the very same thing, like a fantastic club. And then of course now he's got into management and has done the same thing again. And I suppose further down the road, Kilkenny people will figure, well, he's going to be the senior manager, and of course that's when the real trouble starts, because then he has to do as good as Brian Cody, which is next to impossible to him. Maybe someone like Henry could, but to me, like he's a standout player and a standout sportsman, like through thick and thin and through the good times and the bad. No, he's mostly good times, but he's also been the field where he's took it on the chin and got on to the next level again. And even now in his management, you can see that coolness and that kind of, kind of able to think under pressure and kind of perform under pressure, which is a sign of a great player.
And I suppose TJ Ryan, I say this is fairly anonymous as well. We'll just get you to confirm your number one as well.
Yeah, there's no words of mine going to do justice. Like, obviously, number one for me is Henry. I hurled in the same year as him. Just a phenomenal player. I can't do the man justice. Cyril has more or less said it all there, even throughout, and still he's hurting us because I was involved with the club team, basically, and Henry killed us there too. Like, so he's kind of quenched me everywhere along the way. I'm not sure, like, he himself and Brian Cody, like, I suppose the era, the two of them will be linked, right? And, like, was Henry lucky to have Brian Cody in this era to build a phenomenal team? Or was Brian Cody as a manager lucky to have a key lieutenant in Henry? But two of them hand in hand, obviously their results speak for themselves. But the game I think Cyril spoke about there was against Galway, and it was 12, maybe the first day in the All-Ireland final. I was at the game myself. Just Henry, like, Henry, Kilkenny were in trouble everywhere, and Henry seemed to spread the forwards out. He called for the puck outs. To me, the message looked very clear that he went back to his goalie and said, "Puck the ball down on top of me." He dragged Kilkenny single-handedly back into the game and eventually winning them the All-Ireland. He got hurler of the year. Look, I could talk about Henry Shefflin all night. Watched him all his career. Just a phenomenal player. Henry will be talked about in 50 and 100 years' time. And for me, definitely deserving to be king and to be number one.
And I suppose, Shawnee, you don't have Henry as at number one, but I assume you have another Kilkenny man at number one, if another sort of Kilkenny forward. Am I correct?
I do. And look, Jim scratched it, changed the ways they got the tip backs out, had Henry one, moved into two, and very bad. But I suppose I've gone for, which is probably the wrong way to go about this, but I've gone for an idol as much as anything else. I mean, growing up, I suppose you get to play with your county and you feel when you get to the field you're as good as anything out there, or at least you think in your head you are anyway. But I don't know, like, just, and maybe I'm kind of biased towards the 90s as much as the 90s. And I wasn't a goal scorer myself, but I was obsessed with goals. Like, 33 goals for his county in 57 games. But for me, what's a phenomenal stat, and I didn't know that, like, Google, was he got 36 goals in 39 club games. A goal a game for his club, like. And yeah, you're right. You mentioned earlier his kind of the dynamo of himself and Charlie Carter, which is the same in the club scene. But one of the games that I think, I could be right, that Cyril was on about earlier when they just couldn't get the better from him, it might have been a game in Hurlers, Cyril, in 97. Might have been,
it was. Yeah, it was.
I remember an overhead pull that he did that day as well, maybe into the second half. The game was in the balance, and like his ability to just score the extraordinary goal, not just a goal, but the extraordinary goal. We played him in the league game in 2000. He didn't have a great final in 99, and we were kind of hoping that maybe he was on the wane after a long period of hurling in the 90s, but we played him in Nolan Park on a kind of a dreary enough February day, and he just, you could feel the ground shuddering with a couple of scores he got. He was an incredible hurler for both league and championship games, for both county and for club. And he also has won the award in the 90s. He was a hurler of the year in 93 as well. And the moments for me, I suppose, it's probably the 97 goal that Esther mentioned. His performance in 2000 against Offaly was a complete annihilation, and the score he got in 2002, which again is being used for any kind of Sunday game montage or hurling montage, and they show his, he balanced the hurling without catching it. He'd no catch left, and he balanced it and struck it off his right with a couple of Clare players. Ollie Baker was one of them chasing after him. He was just an incredible player. Like, his consistency probably wasn't as good as Henry's, right? Like I mentioned Henry earlier, his consistency, I think Henry's was there and better, but just the explosiveness and the ability to get you up off your chair. Just I was always in trouble by the guy. Made him a few times play against him, played way back up against him, and even on the other end of the field, he was up the other end just looking at him with the jaw wide open. I think he was just an incredible talent, and I don't think we'll ever see his legs again.
And Adrian, if I can come on to you, I suppose, are you on the same line of thinking? I'm more or less with Cyril and TJ, and you have the king, as they call him, at number one as well?
Yeah, I do. Without a doubt, the best hurler I ever saw. And Cyril made a good point earlier. It didn't come natural, you know. A lot of people forget that minor under 21, he wasn't a standout player, you know, as county or university and WIT. So Henry worked. Now he was obviously very good, but he worked so hard. He trained so hard and disciplined himself so much to get to the level that he got to, you know. So it's a template for all young hurlers with ability, that if you keep working, you can get to the top. But he's just skill over the years just got better and better. His leadership got better and better. What people don't comment is his physicality. Henry was 6'2", 6'3", about 16 stone, 15, 16 stone. He had like pair of ties like tree trunks. So, you know, you weren't going to knock him too easy, and he had all that skill and panache as well to go with it. So, you know, a lot of these great players we're talking about, the Joe Cannings, TJ Reeds, you know, Seamus Cannons, they're big men. Sorry, Shawnee, but they're big men. They're big men, yeah. So, but the game the game that stood out for me, and TJ mentioned it, I was at the game as well. I've been lucky to go to a good few All-Irelands over the last 20, 30 years. But 2012, Galway had that All-Ireland, and like going in a half-time, and everybody would have been delighted for Galway. But single-handedly, you know, Henry took the game to Galway in the second half, and somehow got Kilkenny a draw. And that was all Henry's doing. Nobody else in that forward sextet done anything like the amount of work or the leadership he showed that day. So he got them to the replay, and they won the replay well. But, you know, outside, people think he scored 12 points, but it was more, you know, the movement, the calling, just the hardship, the yards he was putting in that second half. Like, that was Galway's final. And I came out, without doubt, I said to myself, that is the best performance by anybody in an All-Ireland final in 35 minutes I've seen in the second half. That Henry put in the 2012 drawn final second half, yeah.
And if I can just put it to you, lads, of all the 18 players that are on this list, 17 of them have been mentioned, but the one guy that hasn't been mentioned, I'll put it to Shawnee there as well. He's a Cork man as well. Just a few words on the 2004 winner, Sean O'Halpine, who didn't make the list for the 40.
And from the answer we've got, it's been a very difficult task to pick anything. I mean, anywhere from 11 to 20 committed. He was super hurler, you know, came there and, you know, had to pick up the game late. And look, I would have played a good bit with Sean O'Halpine. I mean, you're on about Henry. I mean, how hard that guy works at his game. Obviously, like, players come up through the ranks. He was a minor 95, and he was a Cork 21 then in 96, 97, 98. We won 3 months of titles, and Cork won the All-Ireland 97, 98. Like, Ilse definitely got better and better. He was a good player. He missed the Limerick game and came back in 02. You could see him physically developing, and you could see his striking in particular, his striking under pressure, getting better and better. And he hit the pinnacle, kind of in that 03 to 06 period. He won county medals. He's 2 county medals with Pearshing as well, Northside rivals of my own, Glen Rovers. He was a brilliant club player too, Jim. Teague Tough, and the lads have referenced, 6 foot odd Teague Tough. You never got it easy off Sean O'Halpine, whether it was aside in training. He trained and played practice games as hard as championship games, a bit like Tommy Walsh. He was a super, super player, a great athlete, a great ambassador for hurling and a great ambassador for Cork. And look, very, very unlucky not to be in there, Jim. But just the list is so strong, and the quality is so high.
And I suppose on that note, we have touched on all 18 names that have won Hurler of the Year from 2000 to 2019. So I'm just going to count back people's lists. So for Cyril Farrell, at 10, he had Austin Gleeson. At 9, he had Cian Lynch. At 8, Richie Hogan. At 7, Michael Finlay. At 6, Tony Kelly. At 5, Lark Corbett. He had a tie at number 4 between Joe Canning and Tommy Walsh. At 3, he had TJ Carey. At 2, he had TJ Reid. At 2, he had DJ Carey. And 1, he had Henry Shefflin. For TJ Ryan, at number 10, he had Jerry O'Connor for Cork. At number 9, he had Michael Finley from Kilkenny. At number 8, he had Cian Lynch. At number 7, he had JJ Delaney for Kilkenny. At number 6, Seamus Conlan for Tipperary. At number 5, Tommy Walsh, Kilkenny. At number 4, DJ Carey from Kilkenny. At number 3, TJ Reid from Kilkenny. At 2, Joe Canning from Galway. And at number 1, Henry Shefflin from Kilkenny. For Seanie McGrath, at number 10, he had Dan Shanahan from Waterford. At number 9, he had Richie Hogan from Kilkenny. Number 8 was Jerry O'Connor from Cork. Number 7, Larry Corbett, Tipperary. Number 6, TJ Reid, Kilkenny. Number 5, JJ Delaney, Kilkenny. At number 4, Tommy Walsh, Kilkenny. At number 3, Joe Canning, Kilkenny. Number 2, Henry Shefflin, Kilkenny. Number 1, DJ Carey, Kilkenny. At number 10, Tommy Dunn, for Adrian Fenlon. Now at number 10, he had Tommy Dunn from Tipperary. At number 9, he had Owen Larkin from Kilkenny. At number 8, he had DJ Carey from Kilkenny. Number 7, Tony Kelly from Clare. Number 6, Tommy Walsh from Kilkenny. Number 5, Seamus Conlan for Tipperary. Number 4, TJ Reid from Kilkenny. Number 3, Joe Canning, Kilkenny. Number 2, JJ Delaney from Kilkenny. And 1, Henry Shefflin for Kilkenny. I suppose I'll just go for closing remarks, and just maybe for 30 seconds, I'll just come to Cyril first. Cyril Farrell. Just a fantastic list, Cyril, from 10 to 1. And if I just talk about a player that's probably who just for 30 seconds now, that hasn't won Hurler of the Year in the last 10 years. But for me, it's an absolute shock he hasn't won it. And in 2013, if Cork won the All-Ireland, no doubt Patrick Horgan would be on that list as well.
Sure, he'd be on anyone's list. If you're talking about a forward, or as a boy saying, if you're buying a forward in the morning, he's a fantastic player, has all the skills, and has the ability to get great scores. Not a great free taker, but outside of that, a great goal scorer as well, and a kind of a great leader up front. Has been carrying a Cork team that's kind of threatened to do things and haven't fully done it. And he's been very unlucky in the sense that not to take in All Ireland, but it's probably still there for him. He's coming to the end of his career more or less now, but he's a guy that minds it very well, probably ahead of himself in training always. He probably does. I'm told he has kind of a job. There's a few hours a day, but kind of does 3 or 4 hours every day training, which shows you what it takes. And he'd be on anyone's team. Beautiful skill hurler. A great hurler for young fellas to watch as well, just to learn all the skills of the game. And if he, no one would begrudge him in All Ireland if he could lead Cork to one, because he deserves it.
And for you, TJ Ryan, an elusive sort of list, and one Limerick hurler on the list in Cian Lynch, and probably your captain was inspirational as well in 2018, Declan Hannon. And I'm sure if Cian hadn't won it, I suppose Declan would have been an honorary recipient of us as well. Yeah,
a key player in the team as well. Phenomenal stick man. Has been a very good hurler underage for his school, for his college, and he's won a lot. And leading Limerick, obviously, to the promised land was huge for him. Just a couple of small things, Jim, before I finish up, right? First of all, Cyril definitely cheated because he got 11 players in, right? So I think in return for that, right? If any of your listeners have any issues, I think you should share Cyril's number, right? Yeah. He's the chairman of the committee here, so if anybody's any issues, they should take them up with him, right?
We'll teach you in St. Thomas's. It'll be all right.
They do. The second thing is just to say thanks, Jim. This has been very enjoyable. Great talking hurling with the boys, and we could do maybe a pint in front of us now or something. We could chat away hurling for the night. And the last thing is, it's probably given us just a mad longing for a great game of hurling right now. We're talking about massive players. The game of hurling is in a brilliant place. These guys have taken it, and they've been responsible, whether it's DJ Carey or Henry or TJ Reid. They've raised the bar and consistently have done it through the years. If you take Messi and Ronaldo, I think one of the reasons they keep kind of raising the bar is because the competition among themselves. And these guys, year on year on year, have pushed each other to the very, very limit to get the most out of themselves. And I suppose we, the punters, people going to matches, people who love hurling, are in a fortunate position that we can go Sunday in, Sunday out. And it's obviously taken this pandemic to probably bring it home to us how much we miss this game.
Yeah. And I suppose, Seanie McGrath, closing remarks for you now for the last 30 seconds. And one player that's probably struck my list, I know I go back to 2013 in the All-Ireland final if Cork had won it, but undoubtedly probably one of the best goalkeepers in the game probably does come from Cork. Such a talismanic, probably one of the best shot stoppers. And I no doubt Cork will win the list if there was number one in terms of goalkeepers in the country at the moment.
Yeah, Anthony Nash is a super keeper. And again, kind of came in, I suppose, at a stage of his career where he wasn't a young lad. He was mid-20s. Maybe felt that Don Lowe had plenty to go in the tank. Don Lowe picked up the Achilles injury, and the rest is history as regards Anthony Nash, two-time All-Star in 12 and 13 or 13 and 14. But certainly, like I was involved with Jimmy in that period from 12 to 15. I mean, his free-taking ability, anything from 30 yards out on his own side was over the bar. And look, I suppose from a health and safety point of view, they probably had to change the rule. But like what he brought to the game, I came down the lift after that game actually in 13, the replay. And I only looked at it the other night. I looked at the first half. I nearly got the gawk looking at it, to be honest. Jeez, we look back in those games. But like there was 13 players on the line. They nearly had everyone from the crowd on the line. Pat Cronin had got fouled. It was a 21-yard free, and he billowed the net. But another guy coming down who was actually working for, he was an American guy that was doing an article for Tourism Ireland, trying to sell Ireland in the States and what it was and the heritage in the game. But he was just marvelling, and he never remembered in any sport, even in the States or anywhere, where the whole ground stopped, watched the player for the 30 seconds running up the field, had to put the ball down, had to bait nearly everyone from the opposition, and then leg it back to the other side of the field. And he was just enthralled by the guy. And look, I said, we've become part, we're used to it now. That's what he does day in, day out. We see him doing it in training. Now, I know they probably had to change it, but it probably took a little bit, I think, from the game. But as a shot stopper, puck outs, distance, free taking, penalties, 21s, he was just phenomenal for us from that period, from 2012 and 15. And look, he's in the twilight of his career. There's still a bit to go in Anthony. We have another very good keeper coming up in Pat Collins. But I still think there's plenty in the tank for Anthony. And please God, at some stage we'll get to see the likes of him before the year is out. I don't know what will happen. Obviously, we're kind of up in the figures at the end of the year, but I hope we get another couple of seasons out of Anthony Nash, because he's been brilliant for Cork hurling.
And I suppose, Adrian, closing remarks for you. And I suppose Wexford, no doubt, if there's going to be a Wexford, an All-Ireland in Wexford, Lee Chin is going to play a catalyst role. And Lee Chin, I suppose, some Lee Chin up, he's almost like a Rolls Royce. If you put a basketball in front of him, I say he'd be an expert at it. If you put a soccer ball in front of him, no doubt, extremely talented. And if you put a Gaelic football or a baseball bat, I'd say Lee Chin is just the guy is a knack, a graw, he can take up anything, and it's just a compliment of a sportsman.
Yeah, he's like Rory McCarthy on steroids. To be honest, Rory McCarthy was the same back in the 90s. Golfing, football, hurling, he was just a genius. But Lee is the same. There's no doubt. Look, Wexford, we had our chances last year against Tipperary in the semi-final. If we had got to the final and had a good shout against Kilkenny and beat them, Lee Chin would have probably been hurler of the year, and that's the way it was going, So he's certainly thereabouts, and Wexford are at the table again, which we're all delighted down here on Wexford with. And David Fitzgerald, your own chairman, Jim, is doing the magic down here. But yeah, a bit like some of the players we spoke to earlier on. It didn't come easy for Lee. When Lee started, he was a footballer kind of trying to play hurling. And he was soloing down blind alleys. He was an immense athlete, great runner with the ball, but, probably hadn't got the hurling ability of most others. But, and was running in kind of down blind alleys, as I said, and losing the ball in tackles. But he's worked so hard on his game over the last kind of 3, 4, 5 years, and now he's one of the best in the game. So, looks after his body really well. The modern player, into their athleticism, their nutrition, the whole holistic thing. But more so than anything is his work on his hurling. And it probably goes unnoticed to many outside Wexford, but in 2018 and 17 we were competing, but our free taking was killing us. Our percentage, free to score was about 70%, and we were losing games by 2 or 3 points. But last year, Lee Chin had the highest scoring accuracy of any free taker in the country. And that really got Wexford to the place they got to, So he's worked very hard at that. It reminded me of Johnny Dooley, Cyril, back in the day, that you'd hear about Johnny practicing 100 frees a day. That's the kind of effort Lee was putting in last year to get to that scoring accuracy at the top of his game in Ireland. So, yeah, hopefully whenever things get back to right and we see inter-county hurling again, that hopefully Wexford will be there, and I think Lee Chin will certainly be in the shop window for hurler of the year if we are.
That concludes tonight's show. I would like to thank our guests, Cyril Farrell, TJ Ryan, Seanie McGrath, and Adrian Fenlon. Remember, you can listen back to tonight's show on RCB Radio Sport West Clare Monday nights from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. at 92.5 and 94.8 FM and online at www.rcb.ie. And you can also watch the video which will be going up soon on our YouTube channel, RCB Sport. For me, Jim Conlan, good evening. We wish you all stay safe and take care. And for all our guests on tonight's show, thanks a lot, guys. Cheers.